employers will say that they're going to collaborate, but what they're going to do is get a survey done. They're going to ask a lot of people a lot of questions, but they're going to do nothing with the answers. And so I love it's like where you integrating Question Pro, and then your group is really saying, no, we're going to drive this home with leadership. We're going to give this real legs in order to go the distance for these frontline workers. And so I don't want people to say they're going to collaborate. I want them to collaborate.
You're trying to create systems where there's relationships being built at the front line between their leaders and them. And then number two, able to take those relationships in a systemic way through technology to be able to, for the executive leaders to understand what's going on with their workforce. Huge.
The first 90 days, we need to demonstrate some immediate value with what we're doing. So we're saying, okay, we're going to capture more feedback. You're talking about, Cecil, the first one, getting that data. The second component, though, is within 12, 18 months, it's going to tie back to a business outcome. Hi, everyone. Welcome back to the Frontline Advantage. This episode is actually being recorded right after I was in the hot seat and Cecil was in the hot seat, where Priscilla was actually interviewing both of us. And so we wanted to turn the tables and really kind of hear from both of them. Our podcast, as we all know, is Frontline Advantage, connecting employee voice to business outcomes. And you'll be catching a podcast episode from Priscilla and Little Bird Marketing talking about those things. But now we want to understand, how does actually Question Pro think about these ideas around employee voice in general, the future of AI, how that fits into surveys, and what we can all learn from all of that. So ladies and gentlemen, please welcome Cecil and Priscilla.
Hi, nice to meet you.
It's so nice to be on this podcast. And I just have to tell anybody who's listening, please share it with someone else, because I'm sure Vivek puts hours and hours into it. It's a labor of love, but I'm excited to hear your questions. And of course, to be anywhere with Cecil is amazing.
Priscilla says thank you way better than anyone.
Well, great. Cecil, let's talk a little bit about, we were just on, and you were mentioning there were some nuggets of content and some things you wanted to pull. And so let's talk about what kind of things that you found to be most interesting that we were talking about, what we're doing at Teamforce now. And then I think even more broadly, we've had a great opportunity to meet so many wonderful people at Question Pro, attending your X Day, meeting Priscilla at X Day. How do you sort of think about Teamforce, given how much of the landscape you get to see at Question Pro?
Well, I think having strategic partnerships is incredibly important. We're a technology provider, but we're more than that. Question Pro has been around for 20 years, and we have three different arms of the business that we really focus on, and that's our research software, enterprise-ready research software, customer experience, and employee experience. And I think there's a huge opportunity to take what is a macro driver of business outcomes and try to activate the right levers within an organization to be able to deliver those outcomes. And so the pieces that I think about is, who are the right companies to partner with? What are the right technology platforms? And then how do you deploy that technology? And then what are the things that you need to be aware of that sort of gets in the way of getting things done, if that makes sense? And so, I incredibly honored and happy to partner with you, Vivek, and Teamforce AI. And I think the piece where you're truly providing in this mix is the ability to take those macro economic layers within an organization and bring it down to the frontline employer level, because that's where the business actually gets moved. And I think companies that realize that, or business leaders that realize that sooner than later, are the ones that are able to have a competitive advantage. Because at the end of the day, if you think that culture, if you truly believe, as I do, that culture drives business outcomes, then what's at the heart of all that are the people in the front. Like the executives will drive the strategy, but the people in the front lines are executing on it.
Absolutely. And Priscilla, your thoughts around digital transformation, the importance of people, if there's anything you want to share on this topic as well.
Well, I think we know that I like to come at things from the idea of collaboration. And this is why I was so excited to come on this with both of you, is because I love to see how Team Force and Question Pro are working together. Oh, I see that Cecil's got my book with him there.
Love it.
But that's not just a book I wrote. It's what I really believe about life. And companies that are being faced with very difficult challenges, wicked challenges, new things that are emerging, ways that we need to bring more people together in order to solve a more complicated problem. Well, you can't do that if you can't communicate in the collaboration process. And that's what I love. Question Pro is allowing that. Your softwares over at Team Force are allowing that just natural, organic access to giving people information. That's why I love this whole setup. But I will say one of the things I love about what you're doing there, this idea of collaborating in order to solve a bigger problem, it requires one of my fundamental anchors I talk about in my book called itchy backs. And what that means is you need to understand where someone else's back is itching. Like, what is the problem they can't reach? They can't do it on their own. And so it's about asking a series of questions and being in a common norm of asking questions of people. What is going wrong? What can I do to help? What is it what's keeping you up at night? What can you not scratch? Right? And if you start asking this and you start operating in a way where you are more open, then people will share amazing things with you. And that is when real collaborations happen. I will say one thing about what I don't like when people say they're going to collaborate. And I use my air quotes for say, not for collaborate. But a lot of times employers will say that they're going to collaborate, but what they're going to do is get a survey done. They're going to ask a lot of people a lot of questions, but they're going to do nothing with the answers. And so I love it's like where you're integrating Question Pro and then your group is really saying, no, we're going to drive this home with leadership. We're going to give this real legs in order to go the distance for these frontline workers. And so I don't want people to say they're going to collaborate. I want them to collaborate.
Yeah, I love that. Vivek, I know you're chomping at the bit to ask a question, but I wanted to add something to what Priscilla just said. I think there's two big components to engaging with frontline employees. There is the system or the technology being used, but then there's also the people element. I think frontline leaders are incredibly important in this process. And so from a technology perspective, you want to be able to deploy surveys with meaningful questions that are anonymous, where the employees are a safe space is created where they can truly share their thoughts and opinions anonymously. But then also, I think, Priscilla, what you said about taking action upon it is so vital. So it's action both at the executive leadership level, but also at the frontline leadership level. And I think those frontline employees and empowering them with both the skills and the resources to be able to take care of the people from within their teams is huge. And so you're trying to create systems where there's relationships being built at the front line between their leaders and them. And then number two, able to take those relationships in a systemic way through technology to be able for the executive leaders to understand what's going on with their workforce. Huge.
I love that point. We have, which we'll be sharing on the YouTube video podcast, the safety and risk matrix. And the way we try to hit on what you're both talking about is that the first 90 days, we need to demonstrate some immediate value with what we're doing. So we're saying, okay, we're going to capture more feedback. You're talking about, Cecil, the first component, getting that data. The second component, though, is within 12, 18 months, it's going to tie back to a business outcome. Now, we can ask leading indicator questions to say, for example, if you're trying to tackle turnover in particular, and people are complaining about recognition, and we're able to identify that in multiple ways, you might be able to say, okay, the suggestion is to have the manager walk the floor, or plant manager, and say thank you to 3 people each day or each week. And you test that out before you make it into a fully standard operating procedure. And you say, did you notice your manager leader walking the floor each week? Did that motivate you? Does that make you more likely to recommend this place? do you see yourself more likely to stay here a year from now because of that action? Because the business metric ultimately has to foot, it has to occur. But sometimes organizations don't have that visibility. They have fog until it does. And because it's not clear to them, they can actually sit there and say, oh, I don't know if it's actually working. But if you start to present them bite-sized, tangible steps that it's on the path to success, and they're doing it, as you talked about, Priscilla, in collaboration, where their people are saying, I am noticing, I'm actually more committed to this organization because you've done something so small, but you've acknowledged me. You spent 5 minutes getting out of your desk instead of answering another email and saying, I matter. And because you did that, I feel more invested in producing for you. And that's really, those micro moments are so powerful. So I love those examples of how you're bringing up the important components to this whole process. I know we were pretty limited on time today, so I want to talk a little bit about the future with AI, because that is, everyone's talking about AI, and yet at the same time, we're talking about people. What are your thoughts on how you're thinking about AI from an overall question and answer perspective with research, with employee experience, with customer experience? How is the world going to change? And I know it's a huge question, but feel free to take it where you'd like. And then also, Priscilla, with digital transformation, everything from marketing and seeing ChatGPT being able to produce content up the wazoo right now. Every week we're seeing new developments. How's the world going to change with that? And what relation does the human play in a world where maybe intelligence is more equalized and we have to sort of think about things differently, pure, not maybe, raw horsepower intelligence, but not necessarily intelligence about what's happening in our environments with customers, with research, with employees. So I'd love to hear from both of you on this as well.
Where things are going. First of all, digital transformation in my industry, it doesn't scare me. It's so exciting to me. Will there be things that I don't do very shortly? Absolutely. Are there already a million things I don't do already? Yes. I have just moved with it all. There are things that would take me 5 and 6 hours to complete that now take me about 45 minutes. This is a wonderful use of my time. I write a lot of thought leadership pieces. I write a lot of ghostwriting for companies. You still need a person to do that. But as far as the actual transcripts, as far as me getting outlines, as far as me getting note takings done, this is relieving hours and hours of time from my work schedule and from my team. So I absolutely love it. The heavy lifting of what happens in social media, in blog writing, in email setup, in fixing a dumb HTML code that you can't figure out why it's not working. These things are being fixed by AI and I am here for it. It's wonderful. What I think about in terms of marketing and messaging and interacting with your employees and motivating people is, what can AI not do? AI does not know how to make friends, right? So AI cannot have a podcast with two amazing colleagues who then challenge my way of thinking. Right? So that's what I want to spend my time doing. What can AI not do? It cannot crowdsource a blog based on expertise I know from people. It can't call in a favor or a chit from somebody in an industry that I can do. And so I get to focus as a CEO of a marketing company. I get to focus on those things that AI cannot do in order to now get AI to do these other things I desperately need done. And it can get me there so much quicker. But again, I kind of come back to, what can AI not do? And this I'll kind of pass over to Cecil, because I think it is a very good fit to what he sees as culture-driven surveys and culture-driven data collection. Not data collection for the sake of doing it, but really to get the time to think about the meaning of it all.
In a lot of ways, we are all selfish human beings. And I don't mean that as a bad thing, right? If you're looking at in ways that you can consistently be better today than you were yesterday, and what are those levers that you can push and pull to get better, then every new technology is an opportunity to be better, is an opportunity to be more valuable within your own community, with your own relationship at work. There's so many different opportunities for individuals when they're thinking about, how do I leverage technology, or how do I leverage whatever is new to be better? And if you look at it from an abundance mindset versus scarcity, then it's all about value, right? And so, I think about the light bulb. When the light bulb was invented, we were given extra hours in the day to be able to think, to write, to read, to work, to do all sorts of things that we couldn't do when we only had the candle, right? And so I think everything is an opportunity. AI is, the funny thing about AI is this particular moment, this is the dumbest AI is going to be. It iteratively continues to get better, right? And the sooner that we accept it, the better we can decide how are we going to leverage it, right? And I don't think that we'll lose our jobs to AI. We'll lose our jobs to people who have figured out AI. And I think that figuring out piece, and that's where the scarcity versus abundance mindset really begins and ends. To me, it's something new. It's exciting. It's better ways to do stuff. Myself, I'm a writer. I'm a researcher. I love to acquire knowledge. And, ChatGPT is something that I use quite a bit, both in my professional, but also in my personal life as well. I mean, I couldn't believe that I knew that when the Final Four, the 4 number 1 seeds, got to the Final Four last night, I knew it happened. It had to have happened once before, and it did in 2008. But I asked ChatGPT, when was the last time it happened, right? And so I was able to deliver value to my buddies. Now, none of that's work related, but the point that I'm making is that this is woven within the fabric of our society and everyday existence. You got to embrace it.
Yeah, I love your points around abundance and the light bulb. So I was reading something and I was thinking about it this weekend, that analogy for AI could be like electricity. And it may be bold to say that today, but if we think about, imagine the world prior to electricity and since electricity. Everything, transportation, the light bulb, your homes, the computers were on. Like, we couldn't have done any of this way.
And yet, imagine the stupidity of in that moment saying, well, I'm going to use a candle because a candle is what I'm used to. And that's going to be, but this is what people are saying all the time now. This was when social media was exploding. People would be like, oh, it's going to go away. I'm like, yes, as soon as humans stop being social, this is going to go away. Like, what are you thinking? It's like, you're not still riding around in a horse and buggy. You moved with it before. This is no different. Why anybody is treating this any differently is beyond me. Do we need privacy issues? Sure, but we did when we had smartphones. We still do. We constantly adapt and figure this out. So Vivek, I think that's really a good likening to electricity, and you wouldn't turn your nose up at it. So why are people doing that now?
And maybe they are because they're afraid of change. They're afraid of the status quo, where they're entrenched in some position where they felt comfortable and knew how things worked. And something has come in that's fundamentally so disruptive, such a benefit to humanity, but it creates disruption and change and newness. And in fact, that may create even more demand for people that need to feel comfortable and read your book and be aware of all this and be ready to embrace this. Right. Because the path of getting to that world of abundance that Cecil, you're talking of, it's going to be messy. It's not, there's going to be resistance. There's probably going to be backlash. There's going to be, how does this affect economies and governments, and a lot of challenges on the road to actually get there. In fact, there's a bias being here in the Bay Area. I actually think there'll be less of a challenge on the technology of getting there and more we as people embrace and feel comfortable. And like you're talking about the safeguards, Priscilla, how do we actually get there to leverage and use this in the right way to benefit humanity?
But the thing I come back to what you're doing at Team Force AI is you're not saying everybody at the top gets to solve it. You're saying there is so much more to hear from. There is a body of people who are being affected. And if we don't ask them, if we don't include them, then when we do make the change, because we will make the change, we are always changing. We are always doing it. It doesn't mean it's for the better. And so if we do not get the right feedback, we may actually, even if we have good intentions, may use technology in a way that hurts the people that we want to serve. So I think it's this, Team Force AI idea of mindful interaction of technology and humanity in order to solve these very wicked challenges that major industries are facing. And you use the word disruption, and I don't take it lightly. I get it. It disrupts us personally. But companies are being disrupted, industries are being disrupted, the global flow of goods are being disrupted. Everything is out on the table now. And so in that way, we're all kind of hurting, in some way, because we're being made uncomfortable. But I think the approach from Team Force AI is to say, but there is a better way to solve this. There is a better conversation and a bigger conversation to have, and you need to allow for it. And I like what you said earlier, Vivek, about people need real data right at the beginning and kind of get a big win. But they also need to understand that there's a long tail to this. There is a long tail to doing things correctly with digital transformation that results in better outcomes for humans.
Well, thank you both for coming on. This was so much fun, really, to have a discussion about humans and what's happening more broadly. And I look forward to releasing this. So thank you again, Cecil, and thanks, Priscilla.
Thanks, Vivek. Thanks, Cecil.
See you, Priscilla. Bye.